I'm helpless when I'm ocean waves.
Hello, welcome back to my channel. This week I'm going to be reviewing On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. So, let's get into the summary. Janner, Tink, and Levi Igby live on the edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness in Glipwood Township in the land of Scree with their mother Nia, their grandfather Poto, and their loyal dog Nugget. They clash with the Fangs of Dang, lizard-human monsters who occupy their tiny village after the Great War, in which Skrean lands fell to the evil Nag the Nameless as he searches for the missing jewels of Anira. As they resist the Fangs of Dang, they begin to discover secrets of the small town they live in, as well as secrets about their father, Nia and Poto hold from them. So we will be now jumping into the non-spoiler review. The world building in this book is very intricate, whimsical, and humorous. It's similar to J.R.R. Tolkien. He did not create an entire new language for this book, but there's the same level of depth. The little things, and very specific, like, histories. We get nursery rhymes, diagrams of toothy cows, histories on Skrean games, and the Glipper Trail, new instruments and animals, and the architecture of Toroboro, and just so many different things that pop up throughout the story. Throughout the book, there are footnotes that tell you more about the world. Most of these are pretty funny. You can just see the amount of work that was put into building this world. At the back of the book, this kind of just sums up the vibe of this book. On this back of this book, we have like this summary of the book, and then here's a toothy cow. There's toothy cows. And then this is the part that I'm going to be reading. So it says, this book includes original songs and silly poems, an ex-pirate grandfather, toothy cows and real sea dragons, tours of Ankle Jelly Manor and Pete the Sockman's treehouse, suspenseful legend and fascinating lore, genuine recipes for maggot loaf, and authentic hand-drawn maps. And that's just, it's pretty great. I kind of like this book. So this book is a book on war and a book on occupation, and it deals with some really heavy themes, yet it weaves some humor into the heaviness of those themes. For example, this is an excerpt from the very beginning. There's like an intro to the world. So it says, "Oh yes, the people of Scree were quite free, as long as they were in their homes by midnight, and as long as they bore no weapons, and they didn't complain when their fellow Skreans were occasionally taken away across the sea, never to be seen again. But other than the cruel fangs and the constant threat of death and torture, there wasn't much to fear in Scree." And so this just uses playfulness and this sort of sarcastic humor to reveal the struggles that the characters go through. But there are times that the author just takes all humor away and doesn't shy away from letting it get really serious and sad, and it leads to some very poignant moments. I looked that word up. This book is written in the omniscient third person point of view, which is used very well in this book. Pretty much what that means is it's like third person point of view, which means it's instead of saying like I, we, whatever. Imagine Harry Potter, like that point of view. But with this, you learn what everyone's thinking, so it's not restricted to one person, which I thought was really cool, and he uses it for a lot of humor, and he lets us know what's going on with all of the characters, and it makes this book sound like it's being read aloud to you, which is really nice. The family dynamic in here is also really well done. Within the first couple of chapters after the introductions, you get to know exactly what the atmosphere is in this house, and their relationships only become more heartwarming as they go through their challenges of the Fangs of Dang. There are a couple of things that make this book super awesome that are spoilers, so we'll get into them later. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. I know, right? We found one. We're entering the spoiler section, so if you have not read this book and you don't want spoilers, click away now and go read this book. It's great. So the world building in this book was just truly amazing and complex. The first few chapters introduce the world with humor and with dark themes entwined together. So a lot of people see these couple of chapters as a big info dump, but I really don't see that, because he inserts humor and sarcasm into the chapters to move it along, all while setting the scene for us, and he doesn't have to then give exposition later while the characters are doing things, and can get more into the specific history of Scree and like the little bits of footnotes that we get. So he's not having to give us these big things of exposition. They not only tell us about the physical setting of Scree, they also tell us the emotional setting of Scree and of the Igby cottage. They're all occupied by Fangs of Dang, so they're all not having a good time. This style is continued in the footnotes, which provide context and further insight into the world. I have never seen a book that has footnotes, first of all, and also uses them to such perfection with humor and these dark themes just there together. Here's one of them that I found really good. When townspeople broke the law or were singled out for no reason by the Fangs, so people have been singled out for no reason by the Fangs, that happens, they were sometimes brought to jail where they were beaten by Norm and his soldiers. If this happens, it was sometimes considered by the Glip folk to be wonderful fortune, and upon prisoner's release, if he was still conscious, his friends and family congratulated him and carried on as if he'd just won a major award. If one wasn't lucky enough to receive jail and torture, yikes, Norm sent a messenger crow to summon the Black Carriage, which we learn earlier on, like, pretty much steals you away forever. It's like dying. This excerpt is funny, but it also reveals how sad the lives of Screens are, as being tortured is preferable and a reason to celebrate. The footnotes also give us a lot of world building. I wouldn't be surprised if this author has multiple books of just Skrean history, and I would very much like to read them because all of the footnotes are very fascinating. All of the creatures are also super cool. We have Flabbits, Chorkies, Ridge Runners, Fangs, etc., just like really whimsical creatures. There was a quote from the intro about animals that I found really funny and just kind of describes how weird they are. A farmer from South Turboro claimed to have seen a rat badger as big as a young meep, which is about the size of a full-grown Chorkney, an animal that stands about as high as a Flabbit. This book is great. So this book also deals with war really well. We see how empty everyone is when Jenner sees that while everyone seems happy at the Dragon Day Festival, the Fang occupation is eating everyone alive. This theme is present from the very beginning. No matter how much humor there is in this book, we are always aware of the fact that these characters have to live in fear. We also see that when Norm goes to Turboro, it mentions how the citizens could hardly remember a time when the Fangs were not a normal sight to see on the streets. The sad moments in this book are also done just as well as the exciting, adventurous ones. This book just gets really dead serious at times, and when it does, I get my feelings played with. It's not alright. He lets the heavy themes be really heavy without any humor softening it. Sometimes these moments are sad, sometimes they're heartwarming. I really appreciate how he lets this get real because they are in a rough situation and sometimes it's like, whomp. The calm moments in this book have a certain beauty to them. The moment on the edge of the dark sea where they're listening to the dragon song is just so gorgeous, and the author's background in music is especially apparent with the occasional song and the prose that comes out in scenes like that one. So y'all need to go and read that scene because it's great. I've read a lot of Goodreads reviews that were like, there's a lot of Christian elements in this, and I was like, where? There are no Christian elements in this. Like there is a maker, and there's a sort of a Adam and Eve story at the beginning, but that's it. There's so many religions that have one God and have an Adam and Eve like story. So like, you really can't say that there's specifically Christian influences because it's very general. So it isn't just when they're in jail that we see when the Fangs affect them. It's not like once they leave the Fangs, it's like, oh, they're all happy. That's not how it is in this book. It's so integral to how they're living, and it seeps through all of the humor and all of the good times. There's still always that overhanging, like, wow, we're being occupied by lizard people. There's moments where they like laugh for no reason other than just like they need to laugh because otherwise they're gonna be like, Poto has to fill out forms to get like a shovel because, you know, you can't have weapons without, you know, asking for them. The family dynamic in this book is so authentic and heartwarming. The adults love the kids so much, and I love how the trope of like adults don't care that's written so often in YA is just shattered here because Nia and Poto just absolutely adore the children, because you know what I'm talking about, where it's like the adults don't care about anyone, we're all gonna die because the adults are incompetent. Poto makes a crutch for Leeli who, when she like gets it destroyed, and she's like kicks the Fang and then he writes lizard kicker on it, and I'm like, oh, that was so sweet. And we see Poto promise not to throw the thwaps. Pretty much there are these thwap creatures that are tearing apart Poto's garden, and he like captures them. He's like, I'm gonna throw them into the dark sea of darkness, and Leeli's like, no, please don't. And then he's like, oh crap, no, I can't. And I was like, oh. And then when Leeli gets stolen by Slarb and Poto like immediately drops whatever he's doing and is like off. This is a quote. Jenner thought his grandfather looked 10 years younger and twice as strong. Poto galloped away toward the lane, leaving his grandsons staring after him in awe. And I was like, I admire him so much, and it makes me go. Jenner's outburst at the beginning seemed to come from like nowhere. I felt like it didn't have very much build up, but you know what? That's just me being picky. and I'm not going to count that. The characterization in this book is also really good. Within the first few chapters, we learn all about the Igabys and what it must be like to live with them. Even though we haven't known the characters for very long, we are invested in them and we want them to do well, which is a very hard thing to do as an author, so, you know, nice job. I enjoyed the fact that Leeli and Poto were disabled, but they didn't make them like the disabled character. They each had their own personalities and adventures, and they weren't limited to just being the token disabled character. Pete the Sock Man is also a very interesting character. His story is probably one of my favorites, and he's written really well. How he switches from incoherent nonsense to really intelligent speech is very cool to read. When Janner asks if Pete is his real name, Pete's like, "What's a real name?" He pointed the spoon at Janner. "Is Janner Igby your real name?" "Yes, sir," said Janner. "Is it?" Pete said, turning back to his cooking, and I went, because his name is actually Janner Wingfeather, and now, my friends, that is what we call a cool moment. The mirroring in this book is also so masterfully done. So I'm about to reveal a very large spoiler for the rest of the series, so mute me if you have not finished the rest of the series. I will put a little thing once I'm done spoilering. When Janner is considering leaving Tink behind at the Ankle Jelly Manor, it mirrors what Aram did to Espen. Pretty much, Pete the Sock Man was like leaving Espen because he's the throne warden. He left him behind in the Kilridge Mountains. Except Janner didn't leave Tink behind, and I was kind of like, okay, so you can unmute me now. Unmute me, please. The first half of this book mirrors the second half, which is the main reason why I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, because I was like, once I realized it, I was reading it and I was like, so the first part is more humorous and is lighter and happier, while the second part is much darker and has less humor and has more of those big whomp moments. Both of these sections start at the cottage. They're kind of just chilling. Janner falls into like some horse poop or whatever. They all get captured at the cottage when the barn is burning, and that's kind of when it starts to get real. They're running from the fangs, and that's when it switches. Then they go to the jail, where Janner, Tink, and Leeli are waiting for the black carriage. In the second part, all of them are in the jail waiting for the black carriage. And I was like, so it goes from cottage to jail. And then after the jail, they go to the bookstore, where Tink and Janner gets the map to Ankle Jelly Manor. The way they get to the bookstore also, they get help from Anira. That's how they get out. In the first part, it was with the jewels. That's how they got out. With the second part, it was Aram. It was Pete the Sock Man, who's also from Anira, which I just realized right now, and I'm going crazy because this book is really good. How are you not going crazy about this?
I'm confused.
Oh my gosh. The first part of the book mirrors the second part of the book. So they're going through the same events. They start in the cottage. In the very beginning of the book, they start in the cottage. You gotta think about it as like 2 separate books.
Okay.
First part, second part. In the second part, they start in the cottage. The cottage is being burnt down. It's like the same beginning, only darker. Then after this, they go to the jail. And in the first part, it's Leeli and Janner and Tink. And then in the second part, it's all of them in the jail. And then how they get out of the jail is by help from Anira, which is Shining Isle of Anira. So in the first part, they get out of the jail, Janner, Tink, Leeli. They get out of the jail from the jewels of Anira, stuff that Nia had. And then in the second part, the only reason they got out was because Pete the Sock Man helped them, who is the throne warden of Anira. In both times, they got out because of help from Anira. And they go to the bookstore to recuperate, and Tink and Janner get the map to Ankle Jelly Manor there. And then in the second part, they head to the bookstore to figure out what's going on, and they leave Nia and Leeli there. The next place they go in both of these sections is Ankle Jelly Manor, where Janner go and explore the Ankle Jelly Manor in the first part, and in the second part, they're going there to escape all the fangs. And in both of these, both Ankle Jelly Manor visits, the horned hounds are present, so they come back. And then after this, they go back to Pete's castle. In the first part, they go back after Poto rebukes Pete the Sock Man. Tink, Janner, and Leeli follow him back to his castle. And in the second part, Poto rebukes Pete. Nia goes, no, we're going to his castle. And they go to his castle, and then Poto's view changes. And that shows character development, and it mirrors it. And I was going crazy. So this is the reason I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, because I was like, so cool. The writing in this, it was written in the omniscient third person, which was a choice that was clearly made deliberately. And a lot of people were kind of annoyed about it, and they thought it was a mistake, which I was like, it's so not a mistake? How on earth do you think it's a mistake? Because it was very clearly used deliberately and intelligently for humorous effect. It lets us know what's going on with all the characters. It was not a mistake. I don't know why people think it's a mistake. Also, there was a metaphor made when Janner, Tink, and Nia are waiting to see if Leela is going to come back after she's taken by Slarg, and it is so cool. In the beginning of this scene, it explicitly says, no fire burned in the hearth, no lanterns were lit. They're waiting for Leela to come back. As soon as Janner starts speaking, he's like, I'm sorry I let her out of my sight, I feel so bad. Nia gets up and lights a lantern. Then Nia talks about how, even if hope is a low ember in the night, in the morning you can still light a fire. So, hope is fire. When Leela comes back, Nia's eyes, quote, caught the last light of the evening, glowing like embers smoldering long into the night. And Janner lights a fire as they tell the story of how Leela got back. And they're all like, yay, we got Leela back! And then they're like telling a funny story and Poto's making jokes and it's all happy and fun. And there's like this roaring fire on the hearth. And then later, Poto and Nia decide to tell Pete the Sockman to stay away from the kids. And Nia's like, I don't know if we should. And he's like, no, this man needs to stay away from our children. And, quote, Nia said nothing as she stared sadly into the dying fire, struggling to burn. And I was like, the humor in this book is also very specific, and I've never really seen this before. A lot of people on Goodreads didn't like it. You know, sucks to suck. Your parents clearly did not raise you right, because this humor is great, and I will not tolerate the slander. One problem that I do have with this book is that Nia and Leela don't really fight unless necessary. What I was particularly annoyed about was why Janner was the only one in the tunnel instead of Nina. Like, he's literally 12. She's an adult, why are you not protecting him? I was just kind of confused about that. But I guess that could be excused with the fact that he's a throne warden and they want him to be, like, brave and tough, but, like, he's 12, man. That being said, Nia and Leela were both still really strong, well-rounded characters, which was it's obviously great. They weren't just there. They both served a purpose to the story, which was why I didn't dock it. Do you know what I probably appreciated most of all? There was no romance. Yes, Sarah J. Maas, you can write an awesome gut-wrenching fantasy that's about love and have it not be romantic. The thing is, though, love is essential to this story, but it's a familial love. And you don't normally see a middle grade or YA story that doesn't have at least one romance. And that's not to say romances aren't fun. They can be fun.
Kaz and Inej.
Oh my goodness. If you're writing a love story about, like, Kaz and Inej from Six of Crows, you are doing it right. Keep it in there. I love you. If you are freaking writing Tamlin and Feyre, I want you to just delete Word off of your computer. I want you to never write again, because that is nasty. You can do romance right in YA. That can happen. But I feel like there's not enough stories where there's no romance. It makes me go, oh, thank God. The overall vibe of this book is really great and very original. I don't think I've ever read a book with the same tone or sense of humor, or one that reflects it on itself like this. Most of the time when I read a book, I'm thinking like, okay, I've read this before. Like, I know this. I know what's happening here. So that is all I have for you guys today. 5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. Please take the survey. I hate you. Please take the survey. It's part of my grade. I need it. That will be all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye. Ella, please stop throwing a scrunchie around.
I'm loving it. Wait, you didn't write King of Scars? What?
Listen, the 2 points of view in King of Scars, you know, just watch my review, okay? I explain it, okay?
How did you not write? How?
Because, okay, so the 2 points of view have nothing to do with each other, and I found that very bothersome to me. Anyways, this is not the review we're on, Ella. The first few chapters, the very first few chapters. How are you not going crazy, Ella?
It's good. I was supposed to be quiet. You're always like, Ella, and I have stories for this. Ella, I'm feeling it. I'm like, Ella.
Okay, when there's a cool moment, I want you to, like,
I react.
validate me. So, Ella, this is proof that you can write an amazing middle grade book with beautiful world building, well-rounded characters, and an actual plot.
It's definitely not middle grade.
It is middle grade.
I don't care what people say. It's not middle grade.
It's middle grade.
It's like young
She
adult.
just feels bad.
No, they literally torture people, and they spend like a lot of the time like.
What do they do in Keep Your
almost
Lost Cities
dying.
in the first book? They kidnap her and torture her. You're canceled, Ella.
Like, but
Okay.
there's not as much realness to it.
What?
Like, it feels really real.
Yeah, because it's well written.
She's so mean. I'm gonna shake her camera.
Suck.
I can't
Pretty
believe you
much.
didn't do 5 out of 5 for King of Scars.
Watch my friggin' review,
I
Ella.
can't
Just
believe you.
watch the review.
There's no excuse.
Alright, guys.
Look at my foot.
Just stop it. Ew.
Look at
That-
my hand.
I'm literally 2 seconds away from being done. You idiots.